Welcome back to Healing from the Rough with Next 18. I'm one of your hosts, Matt. Thanks for taking the time to be with us here today as we start episode 1 of the 2-part series with Jonathan Freyer. Jonathan's going to share a little about his background, his time in the military, and start talking about the game of golf and how it's been there for him in life when he got into it. So if you like what you hear, please like, subscribe, and share, and enjoy what you hear. Thank you.
My name's Jonathan Freyer. I'll spell that F-R-E-Y-E-R. I'm currently a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserve, serving in a civil affairs unit down in the Chicago area. I joined the Army back in 1987. Now, back then they had a 2-year enlistment. Active duty, you could get about $30,000 for college. So I said, hey, I need some discipline in my life. I thought I was a patriot. I thought, hey, this is a good thing to do, is let's go serve my country. So joined up, went to the infantry, and then went to, I think we were one of the last groups to go through Harmony Church down in Fort Benning. But once I graduated basic training, went to the 101st Airborne down at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Served for 2 years again. While I was there, I was able to serve 6 months in the Sinai Desert with the Multinational Force and Observers. So that was quite the experience. At 18, being able to live over in Egypt for 6 months, and took leave up in Israel. So that was fun to be there. Got to spend, I think it was 1988, Christmas Eve in Bethlehem at the Church of the Nativity. So that was cool. Quite the experience. But when I came home, I stayed in the Army Reserve, became a military instructor, and then went through the drill sergeant school. Successfully completed that, but then decided to go OCS to become an officer. So at that point, went to the Wisconsin Military Academy, became an infantry officer, served in the National Guard, Wisconsin National Guard, for probably about 7 years, and then returned back to the Army Reserve. And about that time, that's when the Operation Iraqi Freedom kicked off. At the time it started, I was not in a unit that was in the process of deploying, so I looked at what units in Wisconsin would deploy, and it was a civil affairs unit up in Green Bay. So I transferred over there. It took about a year to get civil affairs qualified, and by 2005 I was qualified and deployed to Iraq.
If you live in the southeast Wisconsin, northern Illinois area, and you'd like to be a guest on our show, kind of share some of the things that have helped you deal with traumas, stigmas, things like that, and if golf has helped you along the way, even better, make sure you email me at joseph.melsack@hftr.us, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible, and we'll do everything we can to get you out here to enjoy the beautiful Hawksview Golf Course in Lake Geneva. Thank you.
So give us a little bit of history on your background with the game of golf.
Yeah, I believe I was probably about 6 or 7, and I had a good friend of mine who was my age, but who was really good at golf, so he'd go out with his dad a lot. So whenever I was with him in the backyard, we would pick a tree 100 yards away and just chip to that. So I think golf at a young age just became something to do when you had nothing to do. Because hell, back in the 80s, or this would have been the 70s, there wasn't much TV or Netflix to watch. So I think we had 4 or 5 channels, if you include channel 18 and 24. But
you gotta get up and turn the dial by hand, right? I remember that.
So I would just go outside, and we had 3 houses that had probably a couple acres that you could pick trees, and you could do 150 yards down to 90 yards. And I would just sort of make a little course in the back. So by the time I played high school golf, but grew up in Mequon, so that's Homestead High School. So we had a lot of varsity guys who were the really good golfers. So I played JV. Liked it, just wasn't one of those guys that played a lot. So I wasn't a member of a country club or anything. But again, I think with me, especially with family, I had a brother-in-law that I loved to play golf with. My dad, we would go out, and he wasn't that good, but it gave you time just to talk, be with your dad.
Right.
And then with my brother-in-law, he was good. We would always, like you're doing today with Matt, we would play each other and see who would win. So looking back at it now, I'm 52. I try to force myself to to get out on the golf course. So I joined the VGA, the Veterans Golf Association, or Golfers Association, just to get me out, because I know how important golf is. At least to me, it's a place where I can come and get away from a busy lifestyle and just enjoy the moment. So.
Heck yeah. Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
So yeah, being able to serve the military in the lower ranks as a private and now as an officer, the Army Valley has always meant a lot to me. So what they are is leadership, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. So my high points are especially like at infantry, the infantry school down at Fort Benning. There was a lot of team building exercises that you as a group would come together, and you're given a mission or a task, and then you go out as a group to solve it. And a lot of times an individual is put in a leadership position, they're the leader, we're all followers. So to be able to observe that as a private, and then as officers we do the same thing, it's very interesting to see how people work together. And why that's a high point is that's what my childhood belief of what the military is teamwork, integrity, selfless service, all that good stuff. But my low point, especially at my level now, is sometimes you observe things or do things in the military that no longer follow that. Either one of your peers may backstab you, or the loyalty, you question that. Honor. I had a situation where I had to brief my commanding officer, and as a battalion commander, it's a big thing, but since I was injured in Iraq, I have potentially a traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress, so public speaking has not really been a fun thing to do. So when you brief in front of 200 some people, you're a little nervous, but at that specific briefing, I call it became almost a humiliation, where I was in a position where I just felt almost like a flashback to what I experienced in Iraq. And what hit me there is, on the infantry side, you love your commander because you know your commander will die for you because you'll die for them. Where I learned in other branches of the military, it doesn't work that way, and it's sad. So that the high point and the low point is, every time I see a memo that a higher officer says, hey, we treat all of our soldiers with dignity and respect, once you've been humiliated, especially by a superior, it's almost like organizational betrayal. It's not something you expected, and then when it happens, you second guess, well, what do we really stand for? And again, I'm still in the military, so what I've learned is I treat my subordinates with dignity and respect. I treat my peers and my superiors, and I just got to move on. And like you had said on our call yesterday, it is what it is. I can't turn back time. The general was probably in the right in what he did. It was a fight, flight, or freeze moment that I felt as though I was put in a position that I wasn't given the right answers, and I can't really fight a general. I can't really leave the stage, so it almost becomes a freeze, and then you start second guessing your own self-worth or your confidence. Are you incompetent? And at that level, you don't want to be incompetent as a battalion commander. So that was a couple years ago. I'm back. I would say that was my low point, and I know I'm going over time, but I would like to talk later on about resiliency and how that, in a sense, may have hurt me because I was so resilient. I was injured in 2005, and this happened in 2017, and that's the moment in time I realized I needed help. So
I appreciate you sharing that, and we'll get into this later, probably in episode 2, but a lot of the stuff you're talking about, morally injurious events, degradation of leadership, loss of trust and camaraderie and things like that. Yeah, we'll definitely get into that later. So I really appreciate you opening up and sharing about that.
Okay.
Thanks, John. So if you're a veteran or first responder and you want to come to a golf camp, come to be at one of the Next 18 events, all you need to do is go online to next18.org. You can find us on Facebook, you can find us on LinkedIn, and you can find us on Instagram currently. All of those resources have links to get to our website to find our application page. Or you can reach out to me, Matt, M-A-T-T, at next18.org. I can give you any information you need. We would love to have you at a camp. And I realize you might be asking yourself, yeah, we're going to go play golf. Do I really want to deal with my mental health? Do I really want to deal with some of these things that I'm not a fan of dealing with? I think you should come here. You should get the resources and just be open-minded to maybe living a healthier, happier life. These guys are having a great time.
So tell us a little bit, now that we've talked about everything, your time in service and everything, tell us a little bit about any of the traumas that you might have faced along the way.
So it was interesting. I joined the Army in the 80s, so it was a peacetime Army. But what was cool about my generation, the World War II veterans, the Korean veterans, the Vietnam guys were still young, so they were great mentors. So initially from 87 to 2003, it was a peacetime Army, so there really wasn't any traumas. So my first trauma was over in Iraq, 2005. I was a civil affairs officer. We went to a local hospital in the town of Mahmadiyah, and we were doing an assessment of the hospital. Well, I was in charge of the security element outside. There were 4 Humvees, probably in a half-moon perimeter, 60 yards apart with a wall behind us. And the trauma, I guess, that got me was while we were there, I would go from Humvee to Humvee talking to the troops, but also the locals were among us. And there was a little, I'd say 5-year-old Iraqi kid that took a liking to me. And I talked to him for probably about 20 minutes. He actually, I believe, took me to meet his father, who was in one of the marketplaces. And I don't speak Iraqi, so I have no idea what we said, but it was just more of a hi, how are you?
Right.
So at that point, he went away from me, and maybe 10 minutes later,
Oh, crap, that was a ball.
about 10 minutes later, I noticed to my right side there were 3 Iraqi soldiers fucking around with a cat, like a kitten.
Yep.
And that it hit me because I remember in World War II all the soldiers saying how the locals would look at you, how you react to certain things. So to me that wasn't right. I like animals.
Yep.
So I made a point to walk over, and ironically the little kid was there. So I walked up, knelt down, and started petting the cat and showing the little boy that's how you treat animals. And again, the Iraqi soldiers were probably like, what the hell is this guy doing?
Right.
But probably within 10-15 minutes, we were hit with a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. The gentleman had 3 155 rounds in the back seat. I was dismounted 20 meters from the damn thing, and I guess it's got a kill radius of 60 meters. So myself, another a specialist, we got hit with shrapnel. It pushed the Humvee about 4 feet, and I think that's what saved us from the force of the explosion, because about 20 Iraqis were killed. So it's all chaos, body parts everywhere. And then what got me, because again, I'm former infantry, so I can handle that. When the explosion occurred, I was completely deaf for about 30 to 60 seconds, didn't hear nothing. And then it's like Saving Private Ryan with that high-pitched ringing. And at that point, I was just like, what that blink just happened? And what got me, once I realized what was going on, I checked, make sure everybody was good. It was then my responsibility to go make sure the mission element in the hospital could get back to us. So I took myself, another soldier, and as soon as we walked around that corner, laying on the ground was the 5-year-old boy, shrapnel to the head. He's dead. And the cat, the little cat who I was trying to teach him compassion, you treat animals with respect, was laying dead next to him. So it always hits me that if I didn't take that time to interact with that child, he probably would have went home. Even the cat, if the Iraqis would have kicked him and he would have ran away, he wouldn't have been there. But because I took time to be compassionate, they were in the impact zone, ultimately died. So that is one of those traumas that the Army can't teach you how to deal with that, because and I feel bad for the infantry guys who have their friends die, or they have to shoot somebody that they may not have shot, but that's not stuff that the Army can teach you how to deal with. So I had mentioned earlier about resiliency. The Army teaches you to be resilient, and my downfall was I was resilient. That happened in 2005, not until 2017, where I, in a sense, was publicly humiliated in front of my peers. That's when I realized I need help, man. I've never talked about it, and that's what I love about what you guys are doing. It allows us to talk about it. And I just appreciate what you guys are doing. So.
No, we appreciate you. Let me ask you a question. So one of the things we've kind of seen along the way, we've had guests with similar stories, and there was never any after actions like talks, right? It was finish what you're doing, let's strap up, let's go back out, right? Just suck it up, drive on. And I guess the next question we'll talk about soon here is the stigmas about sucking it up, driving on, things like that. But did they provide anything for you, like an outlet for you guys to sit around and just kind of talk after it happened and kind of be like, how are you feeling? What are you going through? Anything like that?
Yeah, back in 2005, so I was at FOB St. Michael in Mamadea, so I think they called them combat stress teams. So I don't know what the individual was, if it was a psychologist, but in my situation, because I had shrapnel in the leg, I got taken back, shot up with morphine, and that intensified the emotions, because when the sergeant came in to ask me how I was doing, all I could think about was the young boy and the cat. But I would say within 6 or 7 hours, they brought our whole unit together, which civil affairs, we were only about maybe 20, into a tent, and they let us talk about it. But you're still stuck in a position. At the time I was a captain, you got to maintain your composure, or you think you have to, because you still got to, we had a good 7 months left. So they tried to help us, but I don't know. I always tell my wife, within 3 days I'm back on duty. Every child I'm looking at, I'm no longer Mr. Friendly. The suicide bomber, I found out later, he wasn't a suicide bomber. His hands were duct taped to the steering wheel. He was told by the terrorist, drive this vehicle to this location or we kill your family. So that, in a sense, he died for nothing. And that's the type of stuff you look back at and go, what in God's name were we doing? I supported everything we did over there, but from the humanitarian aspect of what life's about, it's not having somebody duct tape your freaking hands to a steering wheel, threatening your family and saying go do this, because that's psychotic, and it's nuts. And even looking back, I second guess if that young boy that I feel compassion for, the enemy could have used him as a way to distract me and my unit. So who knows, because I'll never find out the answer.
And it's hard though, because when you think about it, you said you didn't really play Mr. Friendly anymore. And it's amazing what one small piece of candy did for those boys and those girls, those kids, how much they appreciated us just by the little things. And don't get me wrong, there was ones that pushed back through rocks, things like that. But most of them kids just wanted something, right? Something to feel like they weren't nobody. And so it's got to be hard in itself to have to change that, but understandably so. What's up, everyone? I hope you enjoyed part 1 with Jonathan Freyer. Make sure you stay tuned next Wednesday for part 2. And then we'll get into a little bit more, break down some of the stigmas. And of course, you got to look forward to our 25 question speed round. We'll see you then. Thanks.